Hey everyone, this is Mr. Escamilla, and today I'm going to be guiding you through GMetrix Premiere Pro Practice Exam 2. I am assigning you these two exams, and I will show you how to go through this one Practice Exam 2 in training mode through this video. So let's go ahead and get started. I am allowing you to do these on training mode, which gives you that awesome and amazing spectacular help button, but you do need to be trying to memorize as many of those help steps as possible, because when you take your actual certification test, there's not going to be a help button. So as you're maybe watching this guide and trying to follow along, please don't be tempted to mute the audio, because it's with these explanations and definitions and terms that you're learning that you're going to have a more likely chance of remembering a lot of these things. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started with our first task here. This is a concept question. Anyone can use public domain work without obtaining permission, but no one can own that public domain work. It's going to be the answer for task 1. Moving on to the next question. Which of the following is not a digital video term? The answer would be brick. All of these other terms are digital video terms. Moving on to task 3. It says here, which of the following is not a layer type in Premiere Pro? The correct answer is going to be the difference layer. All of these other terms here are actual terms you may see in Premiere Pro. We'll go ahead and move on to our next task. It says here, which option allows you to export content through the media encoder? The correct answer is going to be Q. The Q option allows you to export content through the media encoder. Moving on to task 5, it says, which of the following correctly defines a sequence? A sequence is an edited video segment or entire project. Be this first answer choice here. Moving on to task 6. There's a lot of concept questions here at the beginning of practice exam 2. Which shot would best follow the movement of a car without moving the physical location of the camera? The correct answer for that is going to be pan. Moving on to task 7, it says here, images or illustrations that represent each shot in a motion picture without descriptive text is called what? That's going to be a storyboard. That usually outlines what shots the movie or film will entail. To animate the properties of an effect over time, you would use what? And the correct answer is going to be keyframes. Keyframes is how you animate. Task 9 says, which of the following options is the result of locking a track? The answer, I'm pretty sure, is going to be you can't do anything. You cannot move, cut, or trim clips in that track. Moving on to task 10, the essential graphics panel is primarily used for editing text. So like it says here, creating titles and graphics. Moving on to task 11, in digital video, resolution refers to the image's pixel dimensions. Answer the questions below using yes or no. Should you use content you do own? The answer is yes. Should you use content you don't own? The answer is yes if you have permission, but for the sake of the test, we're going to put no. There's also things such as fair use that you can look up. Which of the following options is a clip that is unavailable or that Premiere Pro can't locate? That's going to be an offline clip. This test is much easier. There's more task questions that the help button gives you the straight up answer. And with that being said, I think the test heard me because we have our first actual task question here. It wants us to create a new sequence in the sequences bin with a 1920 by 1080 frame size and a 24 frames per second time base without using any video or audio clips, and it wants us to name it custom sequence. So in the project panel, we're going to want to open the sequences bin because we want our sequence to land in this bin. So I'm going to double click it. And then in the project panel, we're going to click the new item button. Now, if you didn't have me to show you, you might be confused to which button is the new item button. But if you hover over these icons, you'll notice they'll tell you the names of them. And that's common of most buttons in Premiere Pro. And we're creating a sequence, so you're going to click New Sequence. And in the sequence dialog box, we're going to want to change the settings. In the editing mode, we're going to want to change this to custom because we want to type exactly what it's telling us. We're going to want to change the horizontal to 920. And this here represents the horizontal. This 480 represents the vertical. We need to change that to, like the question says here, 1080. And we need to make sure that this has a 24 frames per second next to the time base. My mistake. It's not going to be the display format. You're going to want to change the time base here to 24 frames per second. Means that this video will show 24 photos within 1 second, which will make up your video. And then at the bottom of the dialog box, we can change the sequence name to say custom sequence. And there should be no spaces in between the text, and it should be a capital C and a capital S. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. The sequence has been created, and now we can move on to our next question. It wants us to remove the cables.mp4 from the text sequence timeline. Well, there's 3 timelines here. We need to make sure we double click on the tech sequence one. And it wants us to remove the cables clip. So you can just click the cables clip and push delete on your keyboard and then click the next button. That should be the correct answer. Moving on, in the oven.mp4 clip, it wants us to add a marker at 2 seconds in the sequence. So for this one, we want to go to 2 seconds in the timeline. You can type 200 here. It wants us to select the oven clip. You can click markers at the top of the screen and go to add marker, or you can also press the M key to add a marker. And notice that little green icon that appears here. That is how we know we have successfully created a marker at the 2 second spot on the timeline. I can go ahead and click next, and that should be the correct answer. Moving on to task 17, we're tasked to create a new sequence with all previously existing sequences in the timeline on the V1 track without leaving any gaps. And it wants us to put these already made sequences into a new sequence in this order. Now, I thought this question was messed up at first, but I learned how to get this correct. Since nature sequence goes first, we're going to drag that sequence over to the timeline. And then you need to drag the text sequence over. And if it's green like this, then you can continue to put that sequence there and then abstract sequence. But some of y'all, I have noticed that when you try to put the sequence into the timeline, it has a blue and purple layer. It's basically adding all of the layers that this sequence entails. And we don't want that. We just want it as a nested or singular layer in the timeline. So you need to make sure that this button is turned on to get it how it showed me the first time. It's underneath your time code here. This is the insert and overwrite sequences as nest or individual clips button. You're going to click on that, and now you can drag over the text sequence as well as the abstract sequence, and that should be counted as correct. Moving on to task 18, this wants us to nest all layers in the timeline into a single layer. So if you get this video offline, I'm going to just go ahead and click offline for now. If it counts it wrong for some reason, I'll try to fix that later. But here we need to hold shift and click each clip in the timeline to select it. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these. And now I'm going to right click any one of these and click nest. And then I'm going to click OK to nest all of them. Notice now these are all on its own timeline. I'm going to click next. And it may count it wrong because that media clip was offline, but no, it counted it correct. Moving on to task 19. We need to trim the blue MP4 clip down to 2 seconds and apply a mirror effect to the red clip with a reflection angle of 90 degrees. So let's start off with this first task. Trim the blue clip down. Make sure your selection tool is selected in the tools panel right here. And you're going to grab the end of blue. And right now it's like 3 seconds long. You're going to trim this down until it is at 200. That stands for 2 seconds and 0 frames. We've done that first part correct. Now it wants us to apply a mirror effect to the red MP4 clip. So you can go to your effects panel, which is here in the project panel group. You can click effects and you're going to search for mirror. And that should pop up. I'm going to drag that onto the red.mp4 clip. And now I'm going to look in the effects panel and notice that when you add that effect, it adds the effect settings here in the effect controls panel. And I'm going to change this reflection angle to what? Well, whatever the question tells me, which is 90 degrees. So here in the reflection angle, you're going to type 90. And notice how that changes the video just to show you the difference. This is the effect before, this is the effect after. Has a really cool, gives me Doctor Strange into the spider, or Doctor Strange's like dimensional world. Looks really cool. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click next to that, and we're moving on to the next item. It wants us to animate the position of the woodpecker title to move across the screen. Now, this media for me is offline. I'm going to see if I can locate it. That way, y'all don't have to look at this media offline screen the entire time. So to do that, I need to link this media. I'm going to search for it. There it is. And so you may not have that happen, but I had to fix that because it was going to bother me as I tried to solve this question. Okay, on to the actual question itself. It wants us to animate the position of this title to move across the screen. So we need to ensure that the time indicator is set to 0 seconds. And then it says with the woodpecker title selected, ensure that the position under video effects is 960 by 540. And it is. If you look here, I'm looking at the effect controls panel. The position is 960 by 540. Now it says with the woodpecker title selected, click the stopwatch next to position under video effects in the effect controls panel. That, y'all, adds a keyframe. And we wanted that to happen at 0 seconds. So it's important when you do that that your timeline is set to 0. Now we're going to jump ahead to 3 seconds. You can just type 300 here. And we're going to change the position of that title to move to 1100 by 540. So I'm going to type here 1100. And notice it automatically added another keyframe. This little diamond here wasn't here before. It added that. And now if you want to see the effect, we can move the time, the playhead to the beginning, and notice that title moves across the screen. It didn't do that before. And if yours does that successfully, that should be the correct answer. We're going to move on to task 21. It wants us to use the ripple edit tool to extend all clips in the timeline to their full length. So with the ripple edit tool selected, it's going to be this one right here. You can also push the shortcut B, which will select that tool. We're going to just extend these to their full length. They're not that long. You can just click the end of the clip and pull all the way out. I'm going to go to the end of blue, pull all the way out. And it looks like blue. There you go. That should be the correct answer. Make sure there's no gaps in your timeline, and that should be counted as correct. Moving on to task 22, it says here, in the timeline, move the red MP4 clip up to the V2 track and lock the V2 track. So for this one, I'm going to drag the red MP4 clip that's already in the timeline and drag it above. I'm going to click the selection tool and drag it right above it. Now it's on the video 2 track. Now it wants us to click the toggle track lock icon that looks like a lock located on the far left side of the timeline panel, because it wants us to lock this track. So in case you don't see that little lock, it's right here. And you want us to lock that layer. That way this can no longer be changed. It is locked. That should be the correct answer for this, and we're going to move on to task 23. Wants us to answer the following yes or no questions. Are the effects panel and effects control panels different? The answer is yes. The effects panel allows you to search for and add effects to your clips by dragging them from the effects panel to the timeline, whereas the effect controls panel allows you to edit or adjust those settings and adjust those effects. Are the effects panel and the effect controls panel the same thing? The answer would be no. And are they different? The answer would be yes. All right, moving on to task 24. It would like for us to set the speed duration of the oven clip to 50. So I'm going to right click and go to speed duration. And I'm just going to set this to 50%. That's going to slow it down. Notice here that the duration of this clip was 5 seconds. But if I change this to 50, it is now 10 seconds long. So it's twice the speed. And this will now move at a slower speed. All right, it tells us here to stabilize the red MP4 clip using the warp stabilizer. So it says here in the top right of the project panel, click the double arrows and select effects to open the effects panel. So that's right here, the double arrows, or you can just click effects here. It's fine. And it wants us to open distort and drag the warp stabilizer effect. So you can search for this by going to distort and looking for warp stabilizer. You could also type warp stabilizer here, and you're going to drag it onto the red clip. And it'll be analyzing in the background, and it helps stabilize the clip, makes it less shaky. We can go ahead and click next. Now it wants us to change the blending mode of the Woodpecker MP4 clip to overlay. And once again, this clip likes to say it's missing, so I'm going to quickly locate it. I don't think that'll be happening with you all, but hopefully not. All right, so let's go ahead and change the blending mode. The way you're going to do that is by making sure your effect controls panel is pulled up and make sure that you have this Woodpecker MP4 clip selected. In the effect controls panel, this is the effect controls for the Woodpecker clip. We're going to change the blending mode here to overlay. Notice here you have this really cool effect where it is transparent with the robin clip that's underneath it. That should be the correct answer. You can go ahead and click next, and we'll be moving on to task 27. Here it wants us to export the oven in an MPEG 4 format to the GMetrix templates folder. Now, this one I'm probably going to allow you to skip, because when you try to do this the way that it tells you to, it's very picky on where you save this to. And I'll show you what I mean. So you need to find the GMetrix templates folder, which is already a task defined. It didn't pop up because I didn't have the timeline selected, so let me do that again. You need to click here where it says output name, and the hardest part here is finding the GMetrix templates folder. So I know where it's at and how to get to it. You have to go to Library, Application Support, GMetrix. And here, I'm not sure if I think if you save it in here, it's going to count it wrong. The question becomes, do you save it in the ENUS or in Premiere Pro? I'll try saving it here and see if it counts it as correct. So I'm going to click save here, and I'll click export, and let's see if I get it right. I saved it in the GMetrix folder inside of that Premiere Pro folder. If it doesn't count it right, you could try seeing if just saving it in the GMetrix templates folder, like immediately directly there, if that counts it as correct. But if it doesn't, I wouldn't spend too much time on this one. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next question. Here, it wants us to use the rate stretch tool to extend the Robin clip to 9 seconds. And so I'm going to get the rate stretch tool. I'm going to look for that here in the timeline. It's probably under one of these other tools. Here it is. It was under our ripple edit tool, ladies and gentlemen. And now I'm going to go to the Robin clip, which currently is about 5-6 seconds long, and I'm going to drag it until it is 9 seconds long. And this clip is not this long. What's happening is, in order for it to be 9 seconds, it's slowing down the clip. Notice this percentage here next to the clip. It says 66.67%. That means that it slowed the clip down by 66.6% in order to allow this clip to be 9 seconds in length. You'll notice the clip is moving a little slower than what it was originally. So it's a really great way if you need a clip to be a few seconds longer and you don't mind it being slowed down to get that extra time from it. Here's an easy question. It just wants us to render the sequence. So with the sequence selected, you're going to click sequence and select render in to out. And you'll know you did this correct when this yellow bar here turns green. Moving on to task 30. It wants us to delete all audio clips in the sequence without deleting any video clips. So this is trying to see if you know how to unlink, because if you try to delete just the audio clip, notice the video clip gets deleted also. So you're going to need to unlink these. You can right click and select unlink. And the way I selected all of them was by going like this. I'm not sure if it's going to unlink all of them. Oh, it did. Good. So real fast to be able to select now these 3 audio clips now that they're unlinked. And you can push delete, and it will delete all 3 of those audio clips. And that should be the correct answer. Moving on to task 31. It wants us to create a new bin and place all footage files in the project into the new bin. And it wants us to rename the bin clips. So we need to, it wants us to create a new bin, place all footage files in the project in the new bin. And so we need to click the new bin icon and name the bin clips, and then drag and drop all of the MP4 clips into the clips bin. So you may be in the sequences project. You want to click the up arrow to go here to the style compilation. This is like the root folder, the first area. And what we're wanting to do is send all these MP4 clips into the bin that we're going to name clips. So how do you make a bin? You should all know how to do that. If you don't, I'm a little concerned that I haven't done my job right. But the new bin icon is down here. You're going to click that. And you're going to want to type clips with a capital C, because GMetrix is like Hermione from Harry Potter. Likes to correct people and be absolutely correct. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. So make sure you do a capital C. You'll drag all the clips into the clips icon. By the way you can select all of these is by holding the command key on your keyboard. You can hold the command key by, the command key is located to the left of the space bar, and you can hold that to select all the clips, drag them to the clips folder, and that should be the correct answer. Now we're going to move on to task 32. It tells us here to transition between red MP4 and green MP4 using a cross zoom. So we need that transition. So we're going to go to the effects And we're going to open the effects panel and open the video transitions folder. Now we're going to go to the zoom folder, and that is where we'll find that cross zoom effect here in the effects panel. So now I'm going to take that and put it in between red and green. And notice now it zooms in and zooms out to reveal the next clip. If you click next, that should be the correct answer. We have just a few more to do. Let's move on to task 33. It says here, using the foggy mountains.mp4 clip to make a new sequence. Change the sequence settings frame size to 1280 by 720. So we need to find the foggy mountains clip. It's right here in the style compilation project panel. If you're here in the sequences bin, you can click this little up arrow, drag foggy mountains. I think I said froggy mountains earlier. I don't know. You can double check on that. And then it says click sequence at the top of the screen and select sequence settings. And notice for me it's grayed out. It's because my timeline isn't selected. If that happens to you, make sure that this is selected. And now you can select sequence settings. Now in the video section of the sequence settings box, you're going to want to change the frame size to 1280 for horizontal. And that is horizontal right there. And then for vertical, you're going to want to change it to 720. And now you can click OK. And it says here in the delete all previews for the sequence dialog box, you can just click OK. And now you've changed the frame size to what you need it to be. Maybe you're making a video for YouTube and you want it to be this particular size. That's how you can adjust that. All right, can all stock footage always be used for commercial purposes? The answer is going to be no. You need to make sure that footage that you get online has permission for you to be able to use it for a specific purpose. Is all stock footage free? Most of it isn't. Most of it you have to pay for. Some of it you can find for free that websites make for educational purposes, but websites like iStockPhoto, they have a watermark on them because they want you to pay to use them. Task 35 wants us to adjust the volume of the red MP4 clip in the sequence to 5. So in order to do that, we need to click on the clip. We need to click on the blue stopwatch next to the level under the audio effects to turn off the keyframing. And that's going to be right here. Notice that this has a little blue stopwatch. We're not trying to animate the volume right now, so we're going to turn that off. Notice now it's gray. Now we're going to adjust the volume. By default, a clip and its volume is set to 0, which doesn't mean it's muted. You might think that because 0 means there's like no volume, but in this case, this just means this is the default volume. It's not loud enough. We're going to change it to 5. And that should be the correct answer. Moving on to task 36. We need to match each of these definitions. A hue is a color and shade of a color. Saturation is intensity. RGB is red, green, and blue. Contrast is the difference of color and brightness. And then vibrance is going to be intensifying more muted colors. Moving on to task 37. It wants us to arrange the storyboard images in the correct order to visually communicate the story of a plant growing. Well, first, the plant has to have dirt that's picked up. Then you need to throw the seeds in. And then you finally see the plant grow. That might be the easiest question in the whole test. All right, identify when it is appropriate to use each of the video editing techniques. Jump cuts. The answer is never. I'm just kidding. But eliminate space between thoughts and clean up pauses. That could be a reason to use a jump cut. B-roll provides context to tell a story. This, by the way, is cutaways. Let's say someone's having an interview and they're talking about the time that they visited a park. Well, maybe during their interview, it'll cut to shots of the park. Maybe it's about the building of this park, and it'll cut to construction and how the park was formed. Those cutaway shots are B-roll shots. That's an important term to be familiar with. 180-degree rule maintains a consistent environment. All right, you can go ahead and click next, and we'll move on to task 39. Identify each shot type. You have here a close-up. It's super close-up of this flower. Then you have a long shot. This is also known as a wide shot. You see a lot of the environment. Then you have a mid shot. You see the character midway. Mid-body, I should say. All right, here's our last question. Identify the purpose and target audience of the following image. The answer is going to be a TV show advertisement targeted towards children. Why? Well, we have this little fun, cartoonish-looking dinosaur with some text that looks real fluffy and safe for kids. So with that being said, that will complete your practice exam 2. I will give you the points lost from that one question that got counted wrong earlier on. But we made a good score here. We just missed that one question where you had to export. But other than that, you should have got all the other questions correct. We got 39 out of 40. If you have any problems following this guide or have any additional questions, please let me know. And at the conclusion of this test, you are ready to take your certification exam. If you don't have enough time this period, you can definitely take it next time. There's also a review video that you can check out on Google Classroom that will help prepare you for that. Thank you all so much for checking out this video. If you found this video and content to be helpful, make sure you click that like button and leave a comment to let me know your thoughts. I look forward to getting feedback from all of you. Once again, this is Mr. Escamilla. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful rest of your day. Or not, the choice is always yours.